Star Trek Strange New Worlds makes one Spock and Chapel TOS argument more painful. Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3 is about to shed new light on a testy exchange between Spock, Leonard Nimoy, and Nurse Chapel, Majel Barrett, in Star Trek, the original series. In TOS Season 1, Episode 7, What Are Little Girls Made Of?, Spock and Chapel briefly clash over the apparent discovery of her erstwhile fiancé, Dr. Roger Corby, Michael Strong. Now, Strange New Worlds is about to add further depth to the classic Star Trek TOS episode by introducing Corby as a recurring character in Season 3. The casting of Cillian O'Sullivan as Roger Corby in Strange New Worlds Season 3 will drastically impact the relationship between Spock and Chapel going forward. By depicting Chapel's love story before her fiancé inevitably goes missing on XO3, SNW can make Corby's fate in What Are Little Girls Made Of even more tragic. Roger Corby joining Strange New Worlds' cast of characters can also make this TOS exchange between Spock and Chapel even more loaded. Strange New Worlds makes a Spock and Chapel Star Trek TOS argument more painful now that Star Trek Strange New Worlds has practically confirmed that Nurse Chapel will leave Spock for Roger Corby. His skepticism in What Are Little Girls Made Of takes on new meaning. Although Spock is good at suppressing his emotions, they can sometimes manifest in other ways. When the episode starts, Roger Corby has been missing for 5 years, and nobody expects to find him alive. Watching the episode in the 2020s, Spock coldly and logically questioning Chapel's belief in her fiancé could be reflecting his own conflicted feelings. Nurse Chapel also doesn't come off well in light of what Star Trek Strange New Worlds has revealed about her relationship with Spock. Chapel knows perfectly well that Spock was engaged, because his feelings for her torpedoed his engagement to T'Pring Gia Santu. What was originally a clash of cold Vulcan logic and human passion in the TOS episode is now a painful reminder of Spock and Chapel's romance after the events of Strange New Worlds. How will Roger Corby affect Spock and Chapel in Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3, while Spock and Chapel separated in Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2, there wasn't an official breakup. The Gorn crisis in SNW Season 2 finale brought Spock and Chapel back together and appeared to give them a second chance at love. TOS has established that this cannot happen, and it appears as if Roger Corby will end Spock and Chapel's romance once and for all. And yet, various episodes of TOS suggest that Spock and Chapel never completely got over each other, all of which sets the stage for a complicated love triangle in Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3. Maybe Roger Corby sweeps Nurse Chapel off her feet while she's trying to reconcile with Spock. Or maybe the couple decide to call it a day after defeating the Gorn in the Season 3 opener. However, Vulcan or not, Spock can't just turn off his feelings like a tap, meaning that we may see a new side of the beloved TOS character as he watches the woman he loves get engaged to another man. Perhaps that pain is what convinces Spock to shun emotions once and for all in Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3. Star Trek Strange New Worlds SNW has rekindled many classic themes and relationships from the original Star Trek series TOS, but none may be as heart-wrenching as the deepening connection between Spock and Christine Chapel. This development creates an emotional undertow that makes their eventual falling out in TOS even more painful and complicated. The careful portrayal of these characters in SNW adds layers to their relationship, giving new depth to moments that once seemed like passing plot points in TOS. By exploring Spock's vulnerability and Chapel's affections, SNW transforms their later confrontation in TOS from a simple case of unrequited love into a tragic and inevitable outcome of personal growth, conflicting desires, and duty. The evolution of Spock and Chapel's relationship in TOS. Nurse Christine Chapel's affection for Spock was more of an undercurrent than a central storyline. Her unreciprocated feelings for him were often played subtly, with Spock's Vulcan stoicism serving as a shield against any serious emotional entanglement. He did not outwardly reject her, but also made it clear that as a Vulcan, his emotional capacity was limited. For many viewers, the tension between them was more a narrative backdrop, overshadowed by other relationships, particularly Spock's complex bond with Captain Kirk. However, in Strange New Worlds, the creators chose to develop the dynamic between Spock and Chapel in ways that significantly expand on what was once a one-sided story. Here we see a Spock who is in the midst of personal transformation, navigating his identity as both Vulcan and human. This duality allows him to experience emotions more freely than the Spock we see in TOS. Chapel, on the other hand, is portrayed as not just a medical officer with a crush on Spock, but as someone who genuinely challenges him emotionally and intellectually. She is confident, direct, and not afraid to express her feelings or desires, whether they are romantic or professional. As Spock and Chapel's relationship unfolds in SNW, it is clear that they have a genuine connection. They share moments of vulnerability, humor, and trust that make their bond seem more significant and nuanced than what TOS ever portrayed. These interactions lay the groundwork for deeper feelings, especially on Spock's side, where his growing affection for Chapel is evident, even as he struggles to suppress it in line with his Vulcan nature. The emotional impact of their future conflict, knowing the eventual fate of Spock and Chapel in TOS, adds a layer of tragic inevitability to the exploration of their relationship in SNW. In TOS, Chapel's affection for Spock is never fulfilled. Spock, adhering strictly to his Vulcan discipline, remains emotionally distant, and Chapel, despite her clear feelings, never presses him too far, recognizing the boundaries he maintains. While TOS may not have delved deeply into their dynamic, one episode stands out as particularly significant: Amok Time. In Amok Time, Spock must return to Vulcan for his mating ritual, Ponfar, and it becomes clear that his emotional world is far more complicated than the cold, logical exterior he presents. Chapel's feelings for Spock are evident in this episode, but they are unacknowledged by Spock, who remains committed to his Vulcan obligations. The lack of resolution or acknowledgement in TOS might have been seen as a consequence of the show's episodic nature and the limitations of 1960s storytelling. However, when viewed through the lens of SNW, Spock's decision to prioritize his Vulcan identity and obligations becomes far more painful. Why SNW makes this more heart-wrenching? The character development in SNW significantly deepens the emotional stakes. The Spock of SNW is not the same as the Spock of TOS. He is still in the process of grappling with his human emotions, and Chapel represents a possibility of embracing that side of himself. Their burgeoning connection in SNW makes the distance between them and TOS much more poignant. In SNW, we witness a Spock who is willing to let himself feel, however reluctantly. We also see a Chapel who cares for him not just as a man she admires, but as someone she believes could live a fuller, more integrated life by accepting his emotions. This makes the eventual emotional gulf between them all the more tragic. When Spock and Chapel meet again in TOS, the context of SNW retroactively turns their interactions into missed opportunities, a result of Spock's commitment to his Vulcan heritage and Chapel's recognition that she cannot change him. It's not merely a case of unrequited love anymore, it's a deep, personal loss for both characters. Chapel's eventual distance from Spock in TOS becomes less about her unreciprocated feelings and more about her acceptance that Spock has chosen a path she cannot follow. Conclusion: Strange New Worlds adds emotional complexity to the once understated dynamic between Spock and Chapel, transforming what could have been seen as a fleeting subplot in TOS into a fully realized and tragic relationship. The Spock and Chapel of SNW are two people who could have had something profound, but were ultimately undone by Spock's struggle to reconcile his dual nature and his need to adhere to his Vulcan upbringing. This makes their eventual distance in TOS far more painful, casting it as the outcome of deep emotional conflict rather than simple incompatibility. Through the lens of SNW, we see not only what might have been, but why it could never be, making their story all the more heartbreaking.